Hello and welcome to Microsoft Excel 2013 Dashboard Design video tutorial. I'm Tony Ka, and in this series we'll be walking through the entire dashboard creation process. In this section we're going to take a look at our inputs and outputs. We'll start by conceptualizing our outputs. We'll begin with the end in mind, the planning process, and the interactive features in empowering your audience. Then we'll move on to gathering our inputs using SQL Server or Microsoft Access, or also good old Excel if you store your data in your Excel spreadsheet. So there's countless scenarios and reasons for creating a dashboard. And the beauty of going about this in Excel 2013 is the wide range of tools and customizations that are available to you in the familiar interface you're probably already using. So you might already have a business case in mind for your dashboard, or maybe you're learning a new skill set to add to your tool belt. In any case, this video series will walk through the entire dashboard creation process from concept to finished product in order to set you up for success. For this series, we'll be creating an interactive historical product sales dashboard with key features that allow our business leadership team to see an overview of our sales, but also slice the data to any level of detail that they want. We'll be using the AdventureWorks database to populate our dashboard. This is the sample database that shipped with SQL Server and is also available in Access format. AdventureWorks is a fictional business that manufactures and sells bicycles and gear. As the individual responsible for the entire dashboard, it's to your benefit to start the process with the end in mind. Usually the end user of your dashboard will not know exactly what is feasible or the easiest or even helpful to include on the dashboard. So by initially investing effort in a thorough plan, you can go from a broad concept to a detailed mock-up before you ever need to spend time creating features that might be discarded along the way. By defining the deliverable, you can focus on building out only the features that matter, making your process much more efficient. Step 1, let's look at our output. So first we have sales by region, then our top selling products and their monthly sales trend. We'll have Net Promoter Score, which is a metric derived from our surveys, which we send out after every order. Essentially, it's the answer to the question, would you recommend us? And finally, we have the top performing sales reps in the most recent quarter. Next, our interactivity. We have slicers for countries, product categories, and product subcategories, as well as a timeline feature for the date of the order. Step 2, determining our inputs. We have a Access database with the AdventureWorks data imported, as well as our own survey results data table, which is used to derive our NPS score over here. After determining inputs and outputs, it's a good idea to sketch out the dashboard or create some sort of non-functional mock-up for your audience to evaluate, provide feedback, and let you know what they think. It's handy to have on hand as well for arranging the elements on the final functional dashboard. Getting approval from your end users on your final mock-up can save you a huge hassle later by setting your audience's expectations and also confirming that you understand exactly what they want to get out of the dashboard. So those are the key steps in any dashboard planning process. Next video we'll look at the interactive features that can really bring your dashboard to life. In this step, we'll take a look at the interactivity features available to us in Excel 2013 that can really empower an end user to dig into the data as much or as little as they would like. So knowing which options are available to you and the end user is a huge advantage during the planning process. You can impress them with some of the powerful but easy to implement features like slicers and timelines. You can also manage their expectations, or at least anticipate the workload if they want a feature that would demand custom programming. So first, our most powerful ally in interactivity is the pivot table. They work in the background, or actually in the foreground here with the sales reps table, and are data summarization and visualization tables that take raw data from your database or an Excel spreadsheet and aggregate it according to your defined rows, columns, filters, and custom calculations. It's the basis for our first two interactive elements, slicers and timeline. Slicers are basically dressed up filters. They can be customized to match the look and feel of the rest of your dashboard, like we've done here. They can also provide a much better visual representation of the filter elements. Instead of digging through a drop-down list, you have all the options right in front of you. For example, if we want to select just the country Australia, all we have to do is click on that button. If we want to select Australia, Canada, Germany, and France, we just select those on the slicer. If we want to drill down to bikes and then mountain bikes, 2 button clicks later, we're there. No digging through drop-downs. The timeline feature is brand new to Excel 2013. It allows you to easily select a custom sequential date range, such as Q1 through Q4 of 2002, or maybe just Q1 of 2004. We can also change the frequency of the scale here into months if we want more granularity. So if we just want to look at November and December, we can do that. Or we can select years and have less granularity. Hyperlinks allow you to link to different places in the worksheet or workbook, other files, or even websites. For example, if we wanted to continue our list of top-selling products on another page so that we can see product 21 through infinity, we could put a link down here that would say view more products, that would link to another spreadsheet with the complete list. Form controls are another popular interactive feature. They're available on the Developer tab. If you can't see the Developer tab, go to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and make sure that this Developer menu option is checked, and then click OK. There's a variety of useful form controls we could insert. For example, combo boxes, which are the drop-down menu that you're used to seeing on websites, checkboxes, spin controls, list boxes, radio buttons, all of which are controlled by macros or cell ranges in your workbook. Most of these features are easily replaced in Excel by the slicers and the new timeline feature, but if you need to use them, you certainly have the option. So we've taken a look at the most common interactive options available to us, and now you know what Excel is easily capable of. You can use this knowledge to guide your dashboard plan. Behind our pivot tables and charts, we'll be utilizing Power Pivot to work as a bridge between our data and our Excel interface. Power Pivot is a free Microsoft-developed Excel add-in that allows you to harness huge amounts of data almost effortlessly. It's not constricted to row limit, like if you were to copy or import data to a table into Excel. It also compresses the data, saves it with the workbook, so it's completely portable. You can create relationships between data from different sources. For example, we have our surveys table with our sales order ID. This is stored in an Excel workbook, but we actually tie it to access data in temp order detail based on that sales order ID. We can also create custom calculated fields like the percentage over or under quota, which works a lot like the tables feature in Excel. And these are just some of the things that Power Pivot does for us. So one thing to note is that Power Pivot functions in 32-bit Excel, but you really only get the full benefit of the application if you're using 64-bit Excel. So if you have the option, go use 64-bit. Next, we'll dive into the data gathering process by connecting to our database. Now that you've planned your outputs or what you want your dashboard to look like, we need to start the building process by bringing in the data. In this video, we'll look at how to pull in the data from your Microsoft Access database. The primary advantage to connecting directly to your database instead of using another Excel file as your database is that you have instant access to your data. When you refresh your dashboard, it can pull in the latest information from the database, giving your end user a real-time pulse on the business. First, we'll switch over to Access to determine the data that we need to pull. It's best to create a view or query that selects only the data you need, letting the database do the heavy lifting and giving Excel the smallest amount of data necessary for the job. This will decrease refresh and calculation time significantly, as opposed to pointing Excel at the entire database. Less is more, and let the database do the work. I've gone ahead and created the two views that we'll need for this dashboard with the minimum amount of information to do the job. What we've got is the order date, the product category and subcategory, the product name, the quantity that was ordered, the cost, the region, and the sales rep's first name and last name. This is all the information we need to create most of the dashboard. The other part of the dashboard is the sales quota table, where we have the sales representative's first and last name, their sales in the last quarter, and their sales quota for the last quarter. We'll go ahead and switch over to Excel and start bringing in those tables to a new file. We'll go to File, New, Blank Workbook. We'll go to the Data tab and click Get Access or Get Data from Access. I have the database stored on the desktop so I can find it, and we'll go ahead and select that database and click Open. In this dialog box we can enter a password if we need to. We don't in this case. This confirms our settings, and here we have a list of all the tables in our database. We're going to go ahead and select Enable Selection of Multiple Tables, and we're going to check the two tables that we need, Sales Quoted and Temp Order Detail. We can import these as a pivot table report. And voila, we have a pivot table. You can see over here we have our fields that we just imported, including product name and our sales, so we can already access this information. So in this step we learned how to pull in our Access database to Excel for our dashboard. In the next step we'll learn how to do the same but for a SQL Server database. In the last video, we looked at how to connect to Microsoft Access database. In this video, we'll be connecting to a SQL Server database. Let's start by opening up a new document. We'll go to File, New, Blank Workbook. On the Data tab, we'll click From Other Sources. You can see there's a myriad of other choices you can select here, depending on where your data is coming from. We're going to choose From SQL Server. My server name is my computer name / SQL Express. This may be different for you, depending on where your data is. Click the Next button, and we'll select the AdventureWorks 2012 table. We're going to enable selection of multiple tables, and from here we can select the views or tables that apply to your project. Let's go ahead and select a few tables now. To finish up the process, we'll choose Sales Order Data and Sales Order Header. Go ahead and click Finish, and we'll import them as a pivot table report. It'll automatically create the connection for us. And there we have our pivot table tied to our SQL database. Just like with Access, it's best to create a view or query that selects only the data that you need, letting the database do the heavy lifting, giving Excel the smallest amount of data necessary for the job. This will decrease refresh and calculation time significantly, as opposed to pointing Excel directly at the entire database. Less is more, let's let the database do the work. In this example, let's go ahead and put a few fields into this pivot table. From the order header page, let's select order date and subtotal. Now we can see the sales generated each day. So now we've walked through bringing in data from both Access and SQL Server. But what happens if our data is already in Excel? We need to just make a pivot table straight from that. We'll take a look at that in the next video. So far we've looked at bringing in data from SQL Server and Microsoft Access, but what happens if your data is already in an Excel workbook? In this step, we'll cover how to create a pivot table from an already existent table of data. You can see we have a raw data sheet here with, you guessed it, raw data. So we're going to go ahead and select all the columns that have data. We're going to go to the Insert menu and hit Pivot Table. We can see our range, selected range is here. We're going to put it into a new worksheet. Click OK. And it was that easy. Now we obviously lose flexibility because it's not tied to a database, but if Excel is your database, then that's all the steps that you have to take. We'll go ahead and mimic the exercise we did for the other data sources. Let's go ahead and drag order date into the rows box. And we'll move down this list and put subtotal in the values box. Now it's showing up as count. And let's switch it to sum. So instead of counting the number of orders, it's going to sum the total of the subtotal. So now we have the same data output as we did for the other data sources. Again, I don't recommend using Excel as your database. There's a lot better tools for the job, such as SQL Server and Access. But if you have to, then this is how you make it work. So in this section, we began with the end in mind. We conceptualized our outputs and empowered our audience through interactive features. Then we moved on to gather our inputs, connecting to Microsoft Access, SQL Server, and also, in this video, the Excel spreadsheet. In the next section, we'll learn how to leverage Power Pivot. Welcome to Section 2 of Excel 2013 Dashboard Design. In this section, we'll be taking a look at how to implement Power Pivot as a bridge between your database and Excel. Power Pivot is a free Microsoft-developed Excel add-in that allows us to harness larger amounts of data than we normally would be able to with pivot tables, and this is a key feature for anyone working with a large database. In this section, first we'll look at importing data from our database. Then we'll look at adding Excel data to our data model. Then we'll look at establishing relationships and hierarchy between those two. Next, we'll look at calculated fields. And finally, we'll take a look at key performance indicators, or KPI. Alright, let's get started. So Power Pivot's going to allow us to combine multiple data sources into one data model. So we can work with Excel, Access, and SQL databases all from one place. We'll start by clicking on the Power Pivot ribbon. If you can't see the Power Pivot ribbon, go to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and check the box next to Power Pivot. Now, if you don't see it on this list, you can go to Add-ins, Manage COM Add-ins, Go, and then check Microsoft Office Power Pivot for Excel 2013. And check OK. And there it is. Once we're on the Power Pivot tab, let's click Manage, which will open up the Power Pivot application. Then we'll get our external data from Access. So we'll click From Database, From Access, and then we'll find our database, which is stored on my desktop. Click Next. If you want to write your own query, this is where you can do it. Otherwise, we'll select from a list of tables. So the two tables we're going to choose are the two views I created already, Sales Quota and Temp Order Detail. Now again, you can build your data model from tables from your database, but the most efficient way to get your data into Excel, using Power Pivot or not, is to create a view from your SQL or Access database that has only the fields that you need. So we'll go ahead and click Finish. And our data has been imported. Click Close. And you can see kind of a similar interface to access, where we have rows and columns here. And these are our two tables that we imported, two views we imported. And now we've successfully imported data into PowerPivot. In the next video, we'll add one more table to this database from a sheet in Excel. In the last video, we looked at how to import data from our Access database. In this video, we'll look at how to add to the data model using an Excel linked table. So we've just successfully brought in the sales quota and temp order detail views from our database. But what if we want to also include data that we have already in an Excel worksheet? For this tutorial, I've created a separate data worksheet called MPS Data, which associates a survey score with each order ID. So this hypothetical survey question is the response to, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us? So these people are very likely to recommend us, and these people are not. But what we want to do is bring this into our dashboard so we can get a picture of this in comparison to our sales data. We'll start by selecting the data range. I'm pressing Ctrl-Shift down to select till the end of the data, and then click Add to Data Model. The table does have headers. Click OK. This data is now connected to our Excel data. So for example, if we add a row here, and we go back, it shows up at the bottom here. But let's go ahead and delete that for now. So if we go back to PowerPivot, we can see that this table is treated pretty much the same as the others. We can even go into the diagram view, and it shows up just like the other database tables or views. So in this video, we've learned how to bring in all our data to PowerPivot. In the next video, we'll learn how to establish relationships between these tables, so that way we can aggregate them for reporting. So we just finished adding this data sheet from Excel to our PowerPivot data model. Now we need to establish a relationship between this table and our orders table. Relationships define links between tables in a database, and also here in PowerPivot. So to do this, let's go click over to Diagram View, where we'll see all of the tables that we've imported. We want to create a link between Sales Order ID and the Temp Order Detail table, and Sales Order ID in the MPS Sheet data. Let's go ahead and click and drag and release. And the link is selected. So now if you mouse over that arrow or that line, you can see which fields that line represents. This allows us to sort our MPS score by order date, category, and the other metrics that we'll use on the final dashboard. You can have as many relationships as you need, as long as the data matches in each field between the two tables. Another type of relationship is called a hierarchy. We can create a hierarchy within a table by clicking this button here. Hierarchies are a simple way to establish a parent-child relationship between fields within a table. So let's go ahead and name this hierarchy Product Hierarchy. Enter. And now we'll drag the product category, the product subcategory, and the product name underneath it. So this basically creates a prepackaged group for when we start our analysis. We can go ahead and see how this works by clicking Pivot Table, New Worksheet, looking at our temp order detail, and putting product hierarchy in the rows. We can see that we already have our drill down in effect here, where we can look at the different components of each category and subcategory. So now we know how to create relationships between our data fields. In the next video, we'll learn how to create calculated fields, which allow us to pre-process the data before it goes into our pivot table. So now that we've brought in our data and created our hierarchies and relationships in Power Pivot, we need to pre-process a few fields so that they work better in our dashboard. Let's start here on the sales quota table. We'll add a column. Double-clicking on the header allows us to rename the column full name. Now, clicking on the first cell, we're going to type in a formula that concatenates the first name and the last name of the sales representative. So equals first name and space and last name. Enter. And the full name appears in that column. This works very similar to the table in Excel. Now let's move over to the order detail table and create an order month and an order year. If you're familiar with pivot table grouping, where you can group by day, month, year already on the pivot table, this might seem redundant, but because we're using Power Pivot, those active groupings are not supported, unfortunately. Now for this, we'll use the date function. For the year, we'll use the year of order date. For the month, we'll use the month of the order date. And for the day, we'll use 1. So it'll be the first day of every month. So now we can see that even though it says 7/10 over here, it still says 7/1/2003 over here. Similarly, August is adjusted. Now, for order year, we'll do the same thing, but we'll just use the year of the order date, and 1 for the month and 1 for the day. So it'll be January 1st of every year aggregated in this column. So everything from 2003 should show up as January 1st, 2003. Finally, let's head over to the MPS sheet and create a calculated score for each of the scores that we were given on the survey. So we'll call this column NPS score. And for each 10 and 9, we want to make it a 1. For each 7 and 8, we want to make it a 0. And for each 1 through 6, we want to make it a -1, indicating if our consumer is going to work for us or against us with regard to other potential customers that they come in contact with. So we'll write this like any normal Excel formula. We'll start with an if function equals if the score is greater than or equal to 9, return a 1. Otherwise, we'll nest another if in here. If the score is greater than or equal to 7, we'll return a 0. Otherwise, give us a -1. Close parenthesis, enter. And now we have 1s showing up for our 9s and 10s, -1s for our 2s, 3s, and then a 0 for our 8, presumably our 7 as well. So now we've looked at how to create calculated fields. The next video, we'll show you how to create KPIs. So now that we've learned how to create custom fields in the formula bar in Power Pivot, let's look at how to use a calculated field to create a KPI, like on this dashboard. KPI is a visual indicator of whether or not a goal was being met. So in this example, it is whether or not the sales rep is meeting their quota. So you can see the green indicates that the rep is over quota, whereas the red indicates that they're below quota. In order to create this, we need to hop over to Power Pivot and create a calculated field. So let's start by doing over under quota field. That will just be the sales minus the quota. So the positive values will be where the sales rep has met their quota, the negative where they're under the quota. We also need to do percentage over under for our KPI. And we can do that by dividing the sales by the quota, subtracting 1. Next, we need to create a calculated field in order to enable our KPI button. So let's go ahead and click Auto Sum here. Now we can create a KPI. So we want a red indicator anywhere that our quota or that our sales are under 90%. So we'll go negative 0.1 for our first divider between the red and the yellow. If they're 10% under goal or less, we want them to be in the yellow. And if they're over quota, we want them to be green. Let's go ahead and select this icon style and click OK. Now we can see this little traffic light icon here means we have a KPI indicator set up. Now let's put this into Excel by clicking the Pivot Table button. Put it into a new worksheet is fine. Now under the sales quota, we can put the rep's name, and then under the traffic light KPI indicator, we can put the status in the values. And there you have your first KPI indicator. So in this section, we looked at importing data into Power Pivot. We added Excel data to the data model. Then we established relationships and hierarchy inside Power Pivot. We added calculated fields, and finally created a KPI, or key performance indicator. In the next section, we'll be working with pivot tables more in depth, formatting the data, dealing with the options, and the design and the layout. See you there. Welcome back to Excel 2013 Dashboard Design. We've just finished importing our data and pre-processing it with Power Pivot. Now we're going to start working with pivot tables. So we're going to start by constructing our pivot tables. That'll take us 2 videos. Then we'll move on to formatting and options. We'll follow it with design and layout options. And finally, we'll look at adding a calculated field and a KPI from just the pivot table interface. So let's dive right in, constructing a pivot table. So we're going to need a total of 5 pivot tables for this dashboard. 1 for this chart, 1 for this chart, 1 for this table, and 2 for this table. 1 of them for the totals and 1 of them for the trend lines. Let's go ahead and get started with the monthly sales by region chart. So we'll pick up where we left off in Excel. We'll go to Power Pivot, Manage, and we'll navigate to the Temp Order Detail page. Now from here we want to create a pivot table, which we've done before. We can just click the Pivot Table button, and then we'll click New Worksheet. This inserts a pivot table as a new worksheet in our existing Excel file. Now we can come over here to our pivot table fields and add fields from our view. So we want to add the order year and then the order month to the rows box. You can see that creates an outline format here, collapsible into trees, by clicking the plus and minus signs. Then we want to put the line total into the values. If we want it to be sum of line total. So this is going to be the total order value that has happened within each of these time periods. Finally, we'll take the country region code and drag it into the columns box. This separates out our sales by country and by date. So we can see in Great Britain for July we had sales of 37,000, whereas in the US at that same time period we had sales of 500,000. And our total sales for all regions was nearly $1 million. Let's go ahead and title our sheet, and we'll move on to the next pivot table. We'll call this Sales by Region. Next, we'll create the top selling products table. To do this, let's go back to Power Pivot, and we'll create another pivot table. We'll insert it as a new worksheet. We'll go ahead and call this worksheet Top Products. And click back on the pivot table area. We'll go into our temp order detail view, more fields, and select the product name field. Drag that into the rows. Then we'll take the line total and drag that into the values box. So right now this list is sorted alphabetically, but we can see exactly what our sales are for each product using this pivot table. Because we want our top selling products at the top, we'll right click on the data in this column, click sort, and then sort largest to smallest. You can see that now they're in descending order with our top sellers at the top. For our next pivot table, we need to make a monthly sparkline trend to go alongside our top sellers. We're most of the way there on this sheet, so let's go ahead and right click on top products and select move or copy, and we'll create a copy and move it right after the top product sheet. Let's rename this Top Product Trend. Now, when we click back in the pivot table and we navigate through our view to our fields list, we need to scroll down, select Order Month, and drag that into the columns field. Now we have our sales by product by month. As well as the grand total. We're halfway there. We'll finish off the other two pivot tables in the next video. In our previous video, we constructed our first 3 pivot tables. And now we're going to finish it up with our second 2 pivot tables. Let's get started. First, we'll tackle our Net Promoter Score pivot table in order to make this chart. To do so, we'll pop back into Power Pivot and click Pivot Table. We'll insert it into a new worksheet, and now we'll add the data from our NPS fields. We'll take NPS score into our rows, and from our temp order detail view, we'll open more fields and choose Order Month for our columns, and then Sales Order ID for values. Now we want to change the sum of Sales Order ID to the count, so we'll click on this down arrow, click Value Field Settings, and change the Summarize Value field by to count. Click OK. So now we have the number of surveys that returned a -1 in July, the number of passives, the number of promoters, and the total number of surveys. Next, let's calculate our Net Promoter Score. We'll use the sum product formula to multiply 2 arrays. We'll multiply each of the count of the scores times the value of the scores for each of the months. So press Tab to complete the formula, and we'll select this range here, comma, this range here, and I'm going to press F4 to make those absolute references, and close parenthesis. And let's divide that by the count, the total count of the surveys. Now we could click right here, and that would put in a cube function, which is the getPivot data function, but then we'd have to modify the date lookup here to reference the cell that we were above. So just to simplify that, we'll go ahead and type in C8, which is the reference to that cell, and then we'll multiply by 100 to get us out of the percentage and get us into the real numbers here. So now we've got a calculation for each of these months. And let's go ahead and extend that to the end of the workbook. I'm going to push Control right arrow, which will take us to the end of the document. I'm going to push Control Shift left, which will take us back to that last cell. And then I'm going to hit Control R, which will copy the cell across the entire row. So you can see we've got it all the way back out here to the end of the workbook. And of course it goes to the beginning. That'll allow us flexibility if we add more months in the future, which is pretty likely if you're making a dashboard. The final table we need to get set up is the sales rep quota, which we started back on the last section. So if you remember back from our completed dashboard, we needed to have quarter-to-date sales, our quota, our indicator, or KPI, and then our over-under for the quota. So let's go ahead and add these columns in. We're under the sales quota table, and we'll drag in sales into the values, and then our sales quota. And notice where the green line is, that's where it goes. So you can change its order just by dragging it in this values box. Finally, we want the over-under quota on the end of the list. So now we have our data in order. So we've completed constructing all of our pivot tables. In the next video, we'll look at our formatting and options. In the last two videos, we looked at how to build out our pivot tables. Now we're going to take a look at formatting and options. So the pivot table we'll be customizing in this video is the top performing sales reps table. So we generated the data last video, and now we'll be making it look similar to this. We're going to start by changing the column headers. Click on the name and type in what you want there instead. So for this column, we want sales rep. For the next column, quarter-to-date sales and quarter-to-date quota. This one we want to be blank, but if we just enter a blank name here, delete the contents and press enter, we get an error message that says we can't enter the null value as a field name. So instead I just use a space, and it works just fine. And then this one is plus or minus quota. And I think we have to preface that with a apostrophe, so that way it's recognized as text. Maybe we don't. Alright, so now we have our column headers in place. The next step will be to change our number formats. Now we can always just change the numbers by going to our standard formatting options here, but that's not going to last when the pivot table changes. So in order to make lasting changes on this pivot table data, we need to right-click on the column and click Value Field Settings. We click this number format button here, and now we can change it on a permanent basis. So we want to set this to currency with no decimal places. Click OK. And OK. So now that whole column changed. We're going to do the same thing for this column. For format, currency, no decimal places. For the quota, same thing. But I want to change this to be the parentheses for negative numbers instead of the minus sign. So now we formatted our numbers. Right now the list is sorted alphabetically, but we want to sort it by sales. So we'll right-click on the sales column, go to Sort, Sort Largest to Smallest. Now we have our top sellers at the top. Next, we want to limit it to only the top 5. So let's right-click on the name or the label and go to Filter, Top 10. This gives us some options so we can choose the top or the bottom and the custom number of items that we want. We want 5. We could choose top 5% or some, but we're going to choose items and by quarter-to-date sales. That's correct. OK. So now it's showing the top 5 for quarter-to-date sales. Now we've successfully formatted this pivot table. In the next video, we're going to look at more design and layout options. Last video we covered pivot table formatting and options. Now we're going to go a little bit more in depth with some design and layout options. Let's start by taking a look at this grand total line. We can add or remove it by clicking Design, Grand Totals, and we can choose whichever option is appropriate for our project. Right now it's on for columns only, but we can just go ahead and turn it off because we're not going to need that in our dashboard. If you noticed last video, whenever we refreshed the pivot table, our KPI indicator was getting squished. One thing we can do to prevent that is go right-click anywhere on the pivot table, click Pivot Table Options, and then right down here we'll see Auto Fit Column Widths on Update. If we disable that, the column widths will not update when we refresh. So we can drag this out to make room for the KPI, and then when we click refresh, it won't be squished in there. Another piece to note in the pivot table options is on the Data tab. If your file size starts getting really big, double check that this Save Source Data with File isn't checked. If it is, it means you can distribute the file with the data intact, but that also adds all the data into the file size. If you have multiple pivot tables from multiple data sources, you can see how this really can add up. Let's go ahead and cancel this for now, and we'll take a look at the actual design of our pivot table. Click the Design button in the Pivot Table Tools section. Let's go ahead and add our banded rows to make it easier to separate the lines when we're reading them. Now, we can choose from a wide array of pivot table formats that are already pre-populated by Office, but we're going to need to make a new one that will fit our dashboard. So let's go ahead and click New Pivot Table Style. And here we have all the elements that we can possibly format inside a pivot table. So let's start by formatting the whole table. We can select Whole Table, click Format. We want to fill it with this middle gray here. We want the font color to always be white. Let's go ahead and click OK. So we can see our design is taking shape over here in the preview section. We want our first row stripe to be a lighter gray. So let's click on that, click Format, click Fill, and we'll choose a little bit lighter gray for that, and click OK. Let's go ahead and apply this format. We can see how we're doing. Click OK to save the new pivot table style, and then go up to Design, and then click the More arrow, click on Custom, and now we can see our pivot table has that style applied to it. One thing we need to add is bold to the header row. So let's go ahead and right click on the pivot table style, click Modify, click Header Row, and the Format button. Now we can click Font and change the font style to bold. Let's click OK. And OK again. So now our header font is bold, and our chart matches exactly what we have a need on our dashboard. So now we've looked at the different ways you can customize your pivot table. In the next video, we're going to cover how to add a KPI and a calculated field to your pivot table without using Power Pivot. In the last video, we got more in depth with the pivot table design and layout. In this video, we're going to just be talking hypothetically if we needed to add a calculated field in KPI if we didn't use Power Pivot. So let's get started. We'll use our NPS data as a sample. So click anywhere in this table and click Insert, Pivot Table. And we can go ahead and put it in this existing worksheet in any random cell here to the right. And click OK. So now in this pivot table, let's drop likely to recommend into the values and sales order ID into the rows. So it's going to look a lot like this, but if your data actually had a hierarchy, we could use it here in the rows. So just like in Power Pivot, we need to add a calculated field before we can move on to a KPI. So let's click Analyze, Fields, Items, and Sets, Calculated Field. So we're going to use the likely to recommend in order to build our NPS score. So just like in our Power Pivot example, let's type in NPS score for the name, and then for the formula, we'll do that same if formula we did when we were building the NPS score previously. So if likely to recommend is greater than or equal to 9, we'll return a 1. Otherwise, if likely to recommend is greater than or equal to 7, we'll return a 0. Otherwise, return a -1. To close parentheses. Let's add that field. Now it shows up here, and there it is. So now it looks like we did something wrong. We have 0 showing up for 2's when that should be -1. Let's go in and modify our calculated fields. Click on the name drop-down, NPS score, and let's scroll over here. Looks like we have less than or equal to instead of greater than or equal to. So make the change, click Modify, and click OK. Now that looks correct. The next part's pretty easy. We just select the data range that we want to have the KPI, click Home, Conditional Formatting, and let's choose an icon set. We could choose data bars or color scales or any other highlighting feature that we wanted to. But let's choose this indicator set. So we can see it's already pre-programmed with the right outcome that we want, with yellows for 0s, greens for 1s, and X's for -1s. So if you can't use your Power Pivot or data model to create your KPIs, you can certainly do so using conditional formatting and calculated fields within a pivot table. So in this section, we spent 2 videos talking about how to construct a pivot table. Definitely the meat of our project. Then we moved on to formatting and options, followed it up with design and layout. And finally, we looked at how to add a calculated field in KPI just with the pivot table, not using Power Pivot. In the next section, we'll pull it all together and start building out our actual dashboard with the elements that we've constructed so far. Welcome back to Excel 2013 Dashboard Design. In Section 4, we'll be covering the construction of pivot and combo charts. So, first we'll look at creating a pivot chart and then how to customize it. We'll follow that with combo chart creation and how to customize the combo chart. And finally, we'll finish with how to create a text highlight cell. A text highlight cell is basically a smart sentence where the components update depending on the data that's being referenced by it. So let's go ahead and get started with creating a pivot chart. This chart on the left, the monthly sales by region chart, is our pivot chart in this dashboard. It's pretty easy to create, but it's also pretty inflexible. For example, we can't change the year indicator down here to anything but a month, day, year format. We can't just use the 2003 as the year. We have to use the full thing. But barring these kind of oddities, it's a really easy chart to create and use and automatically gets updated with your data. So we'll start by locating the data for this pivot chart, which will be on our Sales by Region tab. To create the chart, we'll click anywhere on it. We'll go to Analyze and click on Pivot Chart. The pivot chart we want to use is the stacked column. We'll click on Column, Stacked Column. We get to see a preview of it right here. So now that we've selected that, we'll click OK, and it's inserted one for us. So let's go ahead and create a new dashboard sheet, which will be our actual dashboard. Go back to Sales by Region. We'll move the chart there by right-clicking anywhere on the actual chart area. Click Move Chart. And we'll move it to it as an object in the dashboard sheet. Click OK. Now we've moved it to the dashboard sheet. Now you'll notice these gray boxes, which are actually called field buttons. They work like filters, just actually placed on the chart. So we could get rid of Germany, France, and Great Britain, and then the chart would update and adjust. But what we actually want to do is get rid of them, since we'll be using slicers as filters for our dashboard. So we can click on here first. Let's clear the filter to bring back all the data, and then up here under the pivot chart tools, under the Analyze drop section, we can click Field Buttons, and they go away. The next thing you might notice is a hierarchy for the date here, which is pretty handy to kind of break up the years visually. So we can toggle those on and off by right-clicking, clicking Format Axis, and we can scroll down here for labels and say multi-level category labels. Check that on or off to toggle them. So let's go ahead and leave them on for our project, but just so you know, that's where they are. So we've successfully created a pivot chart. In the next video, we'll look at how to customize the look and feel. So in the last section, we looked at how to create a pivot chart. In this section, we're going to customize it to match our dashboard. Now I've arranged the desktop so we can see our target finished product as well as our current work project. So let's go ahead and start by changing the style of the chart. So we'll click anywhere on the chart, and then this little Chart Styles paintbrush appears. We can click on that and quickly select any style that's pre-built that we'd like. So let's go ahead and choose this one. Now it's got the gradient background, which we don't want in this tutorial. So we'll select anywhere to get rid of the styles box and then click back on the chart. Right click on the chart, click Format Chart Area, and then for fill, we'll choose Solid Fill. Under the color, let's choose this gray. And there we have a chart that looks pretty similar already. Next, let's change our axis format to a currency. So we'll click on our axis format, right-click, Format Axis, and we'll scroll down to Number. For our category, we'll select Currency. We'll change decimal places to 0. And now, we're looking pretty similar. One thing that's also handy to note is we can change the position of the axis. Let's click on it. Over here, our Properties bar changes to be our axis or our legend options. And we can select if we want it to show up on the left, or the top, the bottom, wherever. Let's go ahead and keep it on the right for this, but just so you know that that is there. Finally, let's look at how to add a chart title. So we'll go up to Design, Add Chart Element, Chart Title. Now, cool thing about Excel 2013 is that the previews show up when you mouse over these. So we can see the above chart is what we want, differs from the centered overlay. Let's go ahead and choose above chart. We'll triple click the chart title and we'll title it Monthly Sales by Region. And click anywhere to get out of it. So now we've successfully customized our pivot chart. We'll adjust the size and scaling when we finalize the dashboard in a later video. But next, we'll take a look at how to create a combo chart. In our last two videos, we created and customized a pivot chart. In this video, we're going to create a combo chart. A combo chart is a chart that uses multiple chart types for different series within the same chart. For example, our Net Promoter Score chart combines a line graph with a 100% stacked column chart to give us a calculated score as well as the percentages behind it. So let's start by creating a chart. We'll go up to Insert, and we'll pick the 2D column, the 100% stacked column, and we'll start adding our data series. We could, if we were creating a normal chart, we could create it by just selecting the region, selecting the range, and then have it automatically populate the series and legend data for us. But since we're using a pivot table for part of it and a range for part of it, we have to go ahead and create the chart from scratch and enter each series manually. So let's choose Select Data, and we'll add each legend series. So the series name, the first one, let's do percent demoters. These are the ones that scored -1. So we'll go ahead and select this range here, Control-Shift, right arrow. Now we could just stop here, but if we add more data later, it's going to get missed. So we need to specify a range further out to the right. So let's go ahead and change the AI column to ZZ. That'll give us about 700 columns, which is more than we should have on this chart anyway. So let's click OK. And then let's add another. This one will be percent passive. And our series values will be here. Instead of G, we'll go ZZ. We'll add a third for percent promoters. I held down Shift while I was pressing space, and it didn't like that. Percent promoters. Series values, delete. And let's change that to ZZ. And we'll add one more for the MPS score, or just MPS. Series values right here, and again we'll change it through ZZ. Now we need to change our axis labels to be our dates through ZZ. And let's just go back through here real quick and see if we have any issues. Would be making this chart not extend all the way out. So it looks like this one converted back to H. Let's change that to ZZ. That one's still at G. Promoters, did that get stuck too? It did. ZZ. NPS. They all got stuck. And now let's check the motors again. That's still good. And then our axis labels, ZZ. There we go. Alright, now we've got our NPS stuck here. And all we need to do is right click and change the series chart type. We'll change it to a combo. And we'll make it a line. So we're going to keep this as a clustered column, but we'll change NPS to a line graph. And we'll also put it on the secondary axis. So there you can see our charts taking shape already. Click OK. And there we have it. So now that we've created a combo chart, in the next video we'll look at how to customize it to make it look like our actual chart. In the last section, we created our combo chart. In this section, we're going to customize it to match our desired final output. So let's start by changing the entire chart's background color. We'll right-click on the chart area, click Format Chart Area, Fill, Solid Fill, and we'll change the color here to the middle black. Now let's click on, make sure we have the whole chart selected. We'll go up to Home and change the font color for all the fonts here to make them white. Now, let's change the grid lines. You can select, click very carefully until you see the line of dots here along the grid lines, and click Format Grid Lines. And for color, we'll choose just a little bit lighter than our background color. So yes, we'll continue formatting. Maybe even a little darker. There we go. Now let's add a chart title by going to Design, Add Chart Element, Chart Title. Now we can instantly preview what we've got here. Let's do Above Chart. Triple click to select all the text and change it to Net Promoter Score. And click off of it. Next, let's change our chart scale here to be from 100 to -100. That'll flatten out the line, make it some of the smaller trends look less volatile, which would be very helpful for explaining to your audience why the big swings were actually small swings. We'll change that to 100 and the minimum to -100. And there we go. It looks better. Now let's hide the axis labels. We can go to Axis Options, Labels, Label Position None. Let's do the same thing for the percentages over here. Go to Axis Options, Labels, Label Position None. Now let's add a legend. We'll go back up to Add Chart Element, Legend, and we'll add it at the top. Put it anywhere we want. And now we'll change our dates to match our format over here with the 3-letter month and then the year. So right click, Format Axis. We want, under Axis Options, we want the number format to be custom format code, mmm.space YYYY, and add it. And then we'll go to size and properties. We'll just change the text direction to rotate all text to 270 degrees, and that'll square it up for us. Next, let's change the spacing on these, so that way there's less gray space in between them. We'll change the gap width down a little bit. 80% looks better. Series overlap is 100%. If we change that down, they start getting staggered. So we'll leave that at 100%. And then last but not least, let's change the colors. Start with the line. We'll right-click the line, Format Data Series, Fill, the line option, the color, let's make that white. For the promoters, let's change that fill and make it green. For this, we'll make it gold. And for our demoters, we'll make it a red. Now there's one more thing, we need to add data labels. So we'll right click on the line, click Add Data Labels, and now we get this mess here, which we can right click on, format the data labels. The label position, we'll show it above, and then let's format that number. Category will be number with no decimal places. And let's go ahead and select them all and make them bold. A little easier to see that way. And it looks like we have one more thing to do, which is to get rid of this white line here at the bottom. So select the axis. We'll go to Fill, Line, No Line. There we go, all taken care of. In the next section, we'll learn how to implement a highlight cell. In our last video, we looked at how to customize a combo chart. Now we're going to take a look at creating a highlight cell. A text highlight cell helps put a variable into perspective using text that can also be variable depending on whatever parameters you specify. For example, total sales in selected period, and then we see the sales number here, is actually a formula that includes the text of the title and then a reference to the data. These types of cells can be as complex or as simple as you'd like, as long as it serves the purpose of enhancing the dashboard for your audience. So let's go ahead and create this now. When I build these types of complicated formulas, I like to work from the inside out. So first, we're going to reference the total sales number. So we will go equals, and then we'll find our sales by region, and then we'll scroll down and select the grand total. And our formula is automatically entered here. And press enter. So now we've got our number. Next, let's put in an error handler in case our number ever returns an error. Right after the equal sign, let's type if error, parenthesis, and then at the end, we'll type a comma, a 0, and a close parenthesis. So this says if this first part before the comma returns an error, return a 0 instead. Let's go ahead and hit enter. Formula is still good. Now let's format the number using the text function. So just inside the equal sign, we'll go text, open parenthesis. Now this will be our value, and then at the end, comma, quote, pound, comma, pound, pound, 0, which is a format for a number with comma separator for the thousands, and then closing quote, and then a closing parenthesis. Let's hit enter. And there's our number, all formatted. Next, let's concatenate our text. We'll select the cell. On the inside of the equals sign, type an opening quote mark, then total sales in selected period. Then a colon, a space, and a dollar sign, and a close quote. Then, to concatenate this to our text formula, we'll use an ampersand. Now let's hit enter. So now we've concatenated this contextual text string with the number from our database that's been formatted. This string we can format any way we'd like to match our dashboard. So in this section, we started by creating pivot charts and customizing them, started building our dashboard. We also created a combo chart and customized it, and we just finished by creating a text highlight cell to put context on our data. In the next section, we'll bring in the two data tables to our dashboard and customize those elements. Welcome back to Excel 2013 Dashboard Design. In Section 5, we'll be looking at styling and enhancing your data tables. We'll start out the section by formatting the data sheet, then we'll reference a pivot table, then we'll learn conditional formatting, followed by spark lines, and finally we'll use name ranges to determine our spark lines. So let's go ahead and get started. Just a quick reminder of our end goal here with the dark gray background and the two data tables which we'll be adding to the dashboard in this section. So back on our working document, let's go ahead and zoom out to get the same perspective as we have on our finished product. Now let's color the entire background the dark gray. Let's click this spot here where the rows and column headings intersect. It'll select our whole document, and we'll go up to fill and fill it with gray. Next, let's change our font here for our highlight cell. We'll make the font color white. We'll make the font bold, and let's go ahead and make it a size bigger here. One trick we'll use to make sure our charts don't resize unexpectedly or undesiredly, we'll right-click on the chart, click Format Chart Area, and then here under the Size and Properties button, we'll scroll down and choose Don't Move or Size with Cells. Now this will be independent of whether we resize the individual columns and rows. So you can see the Net Promoter Score graph was moving, but our pivot table here was not. And now let's do the same thing for Net Promoter Score. Click on Size and Properties, go down to Properties, and Don't Move or Size with Cells. Now let's visually break up our dashboard into the Filters area and the Information area by taking the row 11 and making it black. And we can shrink it because we don't need it that big. And that creates a nice definitive border between the two areas. Now let's make our charts life size here to fill up the dashboard area. Let's go ahead and drag this out to about like that. We just want it a little smaller. We just want it to hit the bottom of the page when we're all the way scrolled to the top. So we can still see all the data, and we're scrolled all the way. We can see cell 1. So let's move this over to the right, make this a little bit bigger as well. Maybe just a touch smaller. Now let's center our text highlight cell over top of our chart. So we'll start by Control Z. We'll start by putting this cell into column B. Let's make column A align with the edge of the axis here, axis labels. And then we'll highlight the cell range that we want it to merge and center across, and then click Merge and Center. And now it's pretty well centered with our chart. Just align cell J there. Now let's put a chart title down here for our top sellers. So we'll go top performing sales reps in Q2 2004. And we'll format that as white text, bold font. So let's go back to the sales rep quota page, and we'll select anywhere in our pivot table, go to Analyze, and Move Pivot Table. We'll move it to an existing worksheet. We'll click the Find Cell button. We'll navigate to the dashboard and click the cell we want to drop it in. Then click OK. Now we've moved our top sales performers here. Let's move it up one row, and then we can size these columns to fit the data. You can see our NPS chart is not moving as we resize these columns as normally would be. So now let's merge and center our title. Just select the range we want to merge and center, click Merge and Center. So now that we've begun to format our dashboard, we'll follow it by constructing our top selling products table here in the next video. In the last video, we looked at formatting the dashboard sheet. Now we're going to take a look at how to reference a pivot table to create our own table. So what we'll be doing is creating just a standard reference to a pivot table. The problem with using a pivot table in this scenario is that if we had less than 20 top selling products, such as if we choose a subcategory with just a few products, if this was a pivot table, all these rows would disappear. Even if we had it set to, say, the top 20, the rows would disappear and leave the unformatted cells behind, so it wouldn't look as dialed as we want it to. So we're going to just set these cells equal to the values that we want them to on the pivot table. So back on our project worksheet, let's start by making our title cell top selling products. Might as well select this whole area and make it white text. And we'll go ahead and make it bold for now. And then we'll set product name and sales and trend. So now we need to resize these for them to make sense. We'll put a little border here. We will make the product column a lot bigger, increase the size of the sales column and the trend column. We should probably get rid of these extra columns now too. So now we can number these 1 through 20. Actually, let's go ahead and insert another column. Deleted one too many. So once you enter a series, you can select the series and drag it down, and Excel will complete it for you. So the quickest way to reference the cell, our pivot table cell, is going to be to type equals, and then we'll go find our pivot table, top products, and click that cell, B4. But if that's blank, we want to display blank and not a 0, which it would do if it was referencing a cell without anything in it. So let's go ahead and type if top products B4 equals 0. Then we'll make the cell an empty string. Otherwise, Control C, Control V, otherwise reference top products B4. So now it's equaling our top product name from our top product sheet. To get the sales number, all we need to do is drag this over. And to get the top 20, we'll just fill it down. Next, let's unbold this selection, and we'll format our sales into currency and reduce the decimal place, get rid of it entirely. Can make this column a little bit bigger just in case we have bigger sales numbers. Now we can center our column headers as well as our table title. Let's go ahead and move that over a column and then select the columns over the table and click Merge and Center. We can underline the header by going to the border, going to line color, choosing white, and then go to border, thick bottom border. The last remaining step is to create the banded rows, which we can do by selecting a row, holding Control, selecting the next row, and the next row, and so on, and then choosing a lighter gray. We can continue this on down. So in this video, we learned how to reference a pivot table and turn it into a normal range of cells. In the next video, we'll work with conditional formatting. In our last video, we looked at how to reference a pivot table to create our own standard table. In this video, we're going to look at conditional formatting as a way to highlight our numbers. So we're not actually going to use conditional formatting by itself in this project, although we are using a KPI, which is a form of a conditional format over here in this chart. But let's pretend we wanted a bar chart to appear underneath these numbers to help us visualize exactly what they were relative to each other. So we'll go select the range we want, click Conditional Formatting, go to Data Bars, and choose one of these. So now we've got data bars in the background based on the value in that cell. Let's go ahead and hit Undo, and we'll try it with icons. So if we want an icon set based on our value, we can go here and select from any of these custom icon sets. We can also customize these later to say if it's over 3,000 or over 3 million, we need a green check mark. Over 2 million, we need a yellow, and anything under 2 million, we need a red X. But let's go ahead and delete that. Control Z. Another thing we can do is format the entire row based on the number in one of the cells. So let's select this chart or this table, go up to Conditional Formatting, and check New Rule. We'll use a format to determine which cells to format, and then where the formula, we'll enter a formula that when it resolves to true, will color the row. So let's go equals our sales number, and then we'll get rid of our $sign here to make sure that we're making it change for each row as it goes down, but we'll keep our $sign in front of the N to lock it to the N column so it doesn't vary by column. We can finish off our formula. If N14 is less than 1.6 million, then let's format it with a red indicator or a red background. Click OK. So now we've got these rows being red since they are under 1.6 million. We can continue this by adding a new rule, a formula where equals the sales, and again deleting that $sign, is less than, say, 2 million. Then let's format it with a yellow background and click OK. Now we can see it overwrote that last rule, but it's still there. So we can go in and manage our rules, and all the rules we have on these on the current selection show up. So we can just reorder these and then apply the changes. We can have the benefit of all these conditional formats working together. We can do one more and say the background's green, but let's call that a good demonstration for now. Let's hit undo to back ourselves out of this. And in the next video, we'll take a look at how to add the sparklines for our trend. In the last video, we looked at conditional formatting of cells based on their values. In this video, we're going to look at how to implement sparklines. If you recall from our dashboard sample that these small trend lines are called sparklines. They represent the monthly trend of this product's sales. So we can see what the top selling month was based on that yellow column. We can also see if there were no sales for a while and then sales jumped, like in the case of this blue touring frame. We can also see if products were discontinued, like the mountain rear wheel, where there's no sales for the last time period here. So these are pretty useful for taking a look at patterns and trends at a glance. To build sparklines, just select the range that you would like your sparklines in, go to Insert, and choose whatever type of sparklines you're looking for. In this case, we'll choose columns. Our data range is going to come from that pivot table we built. It'll be on our top product trend sheet. Let's go to the front here, and we're going to select the top 20 rows and all of the columns. So 20 rows and all of the data columns. Oops, one more. Holding Shift and using the arrow key to modify my selection. And then the location range is correct. Okay. So now we have hard to see column sparkline graph. Let's go ahead and change our sparkline color to white so it shows up. And then on marker color, let's change the high point to be yellow so we can see when the highest month occurred. So it's still a little small. Let's go ahead and just make the font size bigger. That'll increase the size of the chart that we can use. Now this is all fine and good for a static date range, but since we're going to plan on having a selectable and variable date range, the sparklines won't be able to adjust to that. So in our next video, we're going to create custom sparkline named range and implement some VBA code to make it flexible. In the last video, we looked at how to implement sparklines. In this video, we're going to look at enhancing our sparklines by using named ranges. So out of the box, sparklines won't adjust the number of columns or the data points that are within them. So when we adjust our time frame, which would add or remove columns, that doesn't occur. That won't happen if we don't extend it with some VBA programming. So right now we're going to look at how to implement the VBA code to make this a reality. First, let's create a named range for the sparklines. Go up here and type sparkline range. Now anytime we want to reference sparkline range, it's tied to that specific range. Next, we need to create a named range for the data. So let's go to top products trend, and we need to make a range that adjusts automatically to however many columns that we will be including in our filters. So let's create a named range based on a formula. Let's go to Formulas, Name Manager, New, We'll name it Sparkline Data. And we want the scope to be the workbook so we can reference it from other worksheets. Now for the formula, we need to do the offset function. So equals offset, we'll use the current selected cell as the reference, so B4. Since we want it to start in C5, we'll need to start by offsetting that cell by one column and one row. We want the height of the range to be 20, and we want the width to be variable based on the number of dates that show up. But to make sure that in case there's no data displayed, like if we select a month that has no product sold, we need to make sure there's at least a 1 in column in the named range width. So let's do max of 1 and the count of this dashboard range. So it will count up however many cells are occupied. And then we'll close parentheses. There's our formula. Also, let's get rid of the grand total since we don't want it to be mapped. We'll right-click on grand total and click remove grand total. It's that easy. Now, if we type in Sparkline Data, we're shown exactly the range that will be mapped. Goes 20 rows down and all the way to the end of the count of the months. Back on our dashboard page, we need to select the sparklines, click Edit Data, and change our data range to Sparkline Data. And where we want them to be placed is Sparkline Range. And hit OK. Now if we check what our data is now, we can see it changed back to just the normal reference, which is a problem when our dynamic reference will change. So we need to use VBA code in order to modify this data range. So let's click Cancel. Now the best way to get started with macros is by recording them. So if you don't see the developer toolbar, right-click on your ribbon, click Customize the ribbon, and under Customize the ribbon, choose to make sure the developer toolbar is checked. Click OK. So with the developer toolbar, let's go ahead and click Record Macro. We'll name this Update Sparklines. And we'll store the macro in this workbook. Click OK. Now we're currently recording a macro, so any actions we do in Excel are going to be documented in the VBA code that we can go investigate in a second. So let's go ahead and do the operation that we want done while it's recording. So we're going to edit our data. We're going to change our date range to, or data range to Sparkline Data. And then we're going to change our Sparkline range location to Sparkline Range. The two named ranges we just set up. Click OK, and then click the stop button down here. So now we can go to our developer toolbar and click Visual Basic, and then under our project workbook in modules, module 1, we can see our code is recorded. We can see it's setting the range and the source data here in this line. But let's be more specific and replace active cell with the actual range that we want selected. So we'll start with the qualifier of this workbook, dot sheets, dashboard, dot range, Sparkline range, then we'll let it continue, and then we can delete this range select at the end. So now we need to tell Excel to run this code every time the workbook is updated. So let's go into our sheet, double click that, and we'll type private sub, as in subroutine, worksheet underscore change, in parentheses, by val, target as range. And we'll say update sparklines to run our code. Now every time the macro, or every time the workbook changes, it will go ahead and run that macro. So in this section, we started by formatting our dashboard sheet. Then we referenced a pivot table to create our own formatted table. We worked with conditional formatting, implementing sparklines, and finally, we enhanced our sparklines using named ranges and a macro. In the next section, we're going to look at adding interactivity, including form controls, slicers, and timeline. Welcome back to Excel 2013 Dashboard Design. In Section 6, we'll be adding interactivity to our dashboard. In this section, we'll start by implementing slicers, then we'll work on customizing them to match our theme, then we'll employ timelines in order to slice our data by certain time ranges, then we'll utilize hyperlinks to link between worksheets or external data, and connect them to your dashboard. So if you remember from our sample dashboard, slicers are the controls that allow us to filter our data dynamically at the click of a button. They become popular since they were released in Excel 2010, since they have the ability to display all the options instead of burying them in a drop-down list. So let's get started making these in our own workbook. So to make a slicer, we'll go up to the Insert menu and go over to the Filter section and click Slicer. We're presented with all the connections in our workbook, as well as our data model. We're going to choose Data Model and then our workbook data model. We'll click Open, and then this lists all of our connected fields that we set up in the last few sections. So let's start by setting up our country slicer. So we'll click on Temp Order Detail, More Fields, and go with Country Region Code. Let's click OK. So this list is built dynamically from our database. And what we're going to need to do, though, is to tie it to the pivot tables that are underlying our dashboard. So we'll go up to Report Connections, and we'll check all of our boxes for all of the pivot tables that are related to this data field. We'll click OK. And then we can select data by our country or multiple countries, and our dashboard adjusts and updates based on that. Let's move this one all the way over to the left here. Now we'll make the product category and subcategory slicers, clicking Slicer, Data Model, Tables in this workbook, and then under the Order Detail tab again, we'll choose Product Category and Product Subcategory. Click OK. Both of these slicers now pop up. So we have to link them the same way by clicking Report Connections and choosing all of the pivot tables that we'd like them to connect to. Same with subcategory. It's already connected since we imported them together as a group. So now we can select if we just want the bikes to show up for everywhere but Australia and the US. That's what we've got. Looking at just bike stands, we can select that if we'd like. We have complete control over the data that we view. So now that we've added these slicers. In the next video, we'll look at how to customize them to make them match our dashboard theme. In the last video, we created slicers and linked them to our pivot tables. Now, we're going to customize those slicers to match the look and feel of our dashboard. So let's get started by setting the number of columns on our slicers. So we want this to be 3 rows by 2 columns. Let's click on the slicer, go over to columns, select 2. Now we can resize the box and make it a little smaller. Then we can increase the height of the individual boxes by going over to Slicer Options, Buttons, and changing the height. Next, let's rename the slicer by going to Slicer Settings, and then under the header, changing the name to just say Country. Click OK. So now we've got a properly titled and proportioned slicer. Now let's do the same for the product category slicer. Now let's style our slicer. Click on the slicer. Under Slicer Styles, we'll click New Slicer Style. Let's go ahead and title it Sales Dashboard. For our whole slicer element, let's format that to have a fill the same gray as the current background. Let's click OK. We can see our preview, it's taking shape over here. Let's also make all the text white. We go into Font, and Color, White, and Bold. Click OK. We can see the changes here. For a selected item with data, we'll format it with a light gray fill, and around all of our buttons we're going to place a border, a black border. Click OK. Looks like we'll also need black text on this. Font, color, black. That looks better. For a selected item with no data, we'll have the same background color, the same border, with the black outline, but for the font, we'll make it a lot more subtle by making it just a hair darker and italic. Click OK. Next, for unselected item with data, we'll make the fill slightly lighter gray and add the border as usual. For unselected item with no data, we'll have the full border outline. Our fill will make that same light dark gray, and our font will make italic and just a little bit darker gray so that it blends in to indicate it's not selectable. Now for our hovered items, which is when our mouse hovers over them, we'll change the font color to black and the border, of course, and the fill to white. And we'll do the same for the rest of the hovered. Now let's click OK, select the slicer, and choose our new style. You can see our hovers work as well as all those colors we just picked. We can apply that same style to these by clicking on them and clicking Apply the Slicer Style. So now we have formatted slicers to match our dashboard. In the next video, we'll add a timeline to customize the time frame we display on our dashboard. In the last videos, we looked at implementing and customizing slicers. Now we're going to look at a different type of slicer called a timeline. A timeline allows us to slice different time frames into our dashboard. So we can select a wide range or a small range, and our dashboard will adjust accordingly. Works just like the other types of filters, except it functions on a date value. The first step to implement this will be go to Insert, Timeline, and we'll go to our data model, and we'll choose our tables in the workbook data. Under our temp order detail table, go to More Fields and Order Date. We could also filter by order month or order year, but since order date is actually the days in the most granular date field, let's go ahead and select that. So now we have a timeline, but it's currently not connected to anything. So in order to connect it to our data, what we'll need to do is choose right-click and Report Connections. And we'll need to connect it to those pivot tables. The pivot table 4 dashboard is the most recent quarter sales rep, so it won't actually affect that table, so we don't need to select it, but it won't hurt if you do. Click OK, and now we should have a fully functional timeline. So we can choose one date up to as many as we'd like, or we can clear the filter and choose all of them again. So this month's view is a little hard to work with. You can see we have a lot of months here, and we have to scroll a lot to get there. But what we can do is go to quarters, in which case we can select 3 months at a time, and it'll all fit in this space. So depending on the level of granularity you need, you can choose your preference here. So now that we've inserted our timeline, now let's format it. We'll go up to Timeline Tools, click Options, and then under the Timeline Styles box, we'll choose New Timeline Style. We'll just call it Dashboard Timeline. And then for our table elements, we can customize each one just like our slicers. So we'll click on our first element, Whole Timeline, and format it. We'll choose the same background fill as our dashboard, and let's also get rid of the border. Click OK. And then we can see when we click OK that the style appears up here. Now with this chart, with the timeline selected, we just click on the dashboard timeline style and it applies here. So let's finish customizing this. We'll right click on the style and click Modify. Let's now customize our header. We'll format it. First the font to be white or just off-white and bold. We'll click OK. We can see up here our header color has been changed. That'll reflect on the order date here. The selection level, time level, period labels, those will change our labels here above our timeline. So we're going to change all of these to off-white text. Time level font, off-white. And click OK. We can see that updated. Now let's go back and finish our formatting our bar. To modify, and choose Selected Time Block, Format. This will be the part that is selected, and to go along with our slicers, we should color it. We should fill it with a light gray. Click OK. And our unselected time block, just like our unselected slicers, we should probably fill that with a darker gray. So just lighter than our actual background. Click OK, and OK. So now this matches a lot better with our styles. Of course, it's functional, and now it looks good. So we've completed the functionality of our dashboard and the customization of all the features. In the next video, we'll take a look at how to utilize hyperlinks if we need to drill down into other sheets or even other documents. In the last video, we added an interactive timeline to slice our data by date. In this video, we're going to look at how to utilize hyperlinks to link between other sheets in the document. So let's say we want to look at not just our top 20 selling products, but we want to continue looking at more, but we just don't have room on this dashboard. So what we can do is create a hyperlink to the page that contains the full list, so the top products list. Obviously, we'd format this page better if we wanted to include it as an accessible part of our dashboard, but we can still link to it now. We'll show you how to do that in this video. First, let's just type in more top sellers, and a couple arrows, and we'll right-click on the cell and click Hyperlink. We can link it to an existing file or web page, which is useful for drill down to other files or linking to, obviously, websites. What we're going to do right now is to another place in the document. So we're going to use the cell reference to the top product sheet, which is the sheet we just looked at. And we'll click, actually let's add a screen tip. So we can say link to more top sellers or more top selling products. So click to see more top selling products. And then make sure top products is selected and choose OK. So now if we mouse over this, it should say click to see more top selling products. If we click it, it'll take us to the top products page. Now functionally, we'd like to put a link here that says go back to the dashboard. We just showed you how to do that. So you can do it later if you'd like. Now let's make this cell a little bit more visible. We'll change the font color to white, make it bold, but it's still got that pesky underline, which makes it a little hard to read, and we've already got our arrows there to indicate it's a link. So let's go ahead and change the cell style of our hyperlinks. We'll right-click and choose Modify. And this is the only way to remove the hyperlink underline. So the cell style includes the font, so we can just disable the font and click OK. And now we can just remove the underline that way. Or we could go into the cell styles, hyperlink, modify, and actually change whether or not it was underlined here, and the whole look and feel of all the hyperlinks on the document. So now we've got a valid link to our top products worksheet. So in this video, we looked at how to set up and format a hyperlink. Welcome back to Excel 2013 Dashboard Design. In this section, we'll be looking at how to utilize Power View, which is an Excel feature that's specifically designed for creating interactive dashboards. So first, we'll take a look at how to create a Power View. We'll add drill downs and filters. We'll implement tiles, which is another form of slicers. And then we'll visualize multiples, where we can break a chart down or visualization down into multiple sections. So let's get started. So in order to create a Power View, we'll go to Insert, Power View. So you notice this look and feel is quite a bit different than the rest of Excel. So we'll spend a little time getting to know the features. Now there are many limitations on what we can do in Power View, but for deploying a quick live dashboard with flexible or minimal requirements, I can't think of a better way to go. Let's start by making a map chart, which is one of the cool features we can put together in Power View. We'll see our Power View fields over here, which are the same as the ones we have in our workbook data model. So let's go to Temp Order Detail and put Country Region Code over here. Now we've got a table of all of our regions. Let's add line total, which is our sales, to that chart. So now with this data table, we can switch the visualization to be a map. drag it a bit bigger here. We can see the sales are on the size area. So each bubble is representative of the relative amount of sales in each geography. Let's add another visualization now. Let's select product category and drag it over to the workspace. And we'll drag sales again, line total, into that element. So again, we've got a table broken out by product category. And let's go over to switch visualization and choose bar chart, stacked bar. We'll make this bigger. So now we've got visualization of our sales broken out by product type. So we can sort by the sales amount by clicking the sort by button here. And then we can sort ascending or descending by clicking that button there. Now let's change the look and feel of the Power View. We'll go to Power View and we can adjust the theme here, choosing colors and whatnot. I happen to like the blue. And we can also change our background to something similar as to what we had in our original dashboard. So you can see it updates the font color so everything's readable, all with just the click of a button. We can also adjust the text size and change the font here. So in this video, we've taken a look at how to create a Power View and change some of the common elements on it. In the next video, we'll work on creating drill downs to make these charts even more effective. In the last video, we created a Power View, and now in this video, we're going to add drill downs to our charts. A drill down will allow us to double-click an element on the chart to see the next level deeper, so as to find out what constitutes the bikes category. We'll start by selecting a chart element. By hovering over the border, we can see this dashed line appear. If we click on that, it will select the chart. Now, under the axis, we'll draw product subcategory as well as product name. So now when we double-click bikes, we'll see the subcategory road bikes, mountain bikes, touring bikes. We can also go one level deeper into the product name just by double-clicking. To get back to the top, we hit this drill up arrow. In order to get a drill down on the map, we would just need to add, say, zip code or state or subregion underneath the locations here. But another cool thing that we can do with the map chart is to add a pie chart that'll break up each of these region bubbles. So to do that, let's drag product category into the color box. Now we have bikes with the red portion, components with the green portion, and we need to make this a little bigger in order to see it. And that's one of the unfortunate things about Power View, is adjusting the size of the bubble. What we can do is move the legend up to the top. So we can go to Layout, Legend, Show Legend at top. And now we have a bit more space for our chart. Now when we click on a portion of the chart, the other charts are updated to reflect it. So now we're looking at just bikes from the US. We can also look at just the components from the US. Or we can go over here and click bikes, and we'll just look at the bike pieces being highlighted. Same for components. So in this video, we learned how to get a click deeper on our dashboard. In the next video, we'll check out how to use our filters. In the last video, we added drill downs to our Power View dashboard. In this video, we're going to use filters to selectively look at slices of our data. On our PowerView dashboard, you'll notice the filters area, which we can minimize by clicking the arrow, maximize. We can also turn it off and on by clicking the PowerView filters area. So these filters work just like normal slicers or filters you'd expect. We can drag a field into here. Let's choose year only. And we can drill down to, or we can filter to just the years that we want. Now this has multiple filter modes, which you can click through on this little arrow button, list filter mode. So if we go to list, we can choose 2002, 2004, or we can go to advanced filter mode, the button in the same area, and we can have a more textual or explicit control over our filter. For example, we can type in 2002 to the is greater than or equals to, and now it's filtered to 2002. We can clear this filter by clicking the little eraser button. So now we're back to seeing all of the data. And then we can go ahead and remove this filter entirely by clicking the X, delete filter. So now our view reflects our entire data set with no filters. There's another way to filter just the single element on your view, like this chart. So on it we can filter, we just want the product category bikes. It's not much to look at, but there's just our bikes displayed. Clothing, components. So if we're filtering out accessories, we can do that over here. You'll notice it says we can have the option for this chart or for the entire view. So if it's chart specific, it'll be under the chart heading. Another interesting slider filter is the line total. So this might work better for averages, or like average purchase price or something, but for some it doesn't work very well because it's just filtering out all the small purchases. But you can see it's kind of a unique interface. You can also go to advanced mode and be explicit about the requirements. So let's go ahead and clear these filters now. Drag that back to the beginning. Should say all underneath all of these. So now we've taken a look at how to use filters. And in the next video, we're going to work on implementing tiles, which will allow us to filter and slice on the dashboard itself. In the last video, we used filters to slice our data. In this video, we'll be using tiles to slice our data actually on the PowerView sheet. So let's start by changing our map to be a tile element. Select the map, and we'll see tile by over here. Let's drag the year only into tile by. So now these are tiles where we can select the individual value that we want displayed. Now if we want to add other elements to this tile, we can't just drag over this product category chart. We have to create them within the tile. So let's first start by deleting this product category chart. And then we'll make our tile box bigger. Then we'll drag in our product hierarchy. So let's put product category into this tiling box, which creates a table, another chart element inside this slicer. So we'll create this the same way we did when we started. Create the table, And then from the table, we'll turn that into a bar chart. We'll make the bar chart bigger. And then we'll add to the axis product subcategory and product name to create our drill downs. Drill back up, and let's sort by value instead of that axis. We'll sort descending. So now when we click through our tiles, both of our charts update. Both the pie charts here and the bar chart here. So in this video, we looked at how to implement tiles on our PowerView worksheet. In the next video, we will learn how to visualize multiples so that we can look at the data from multiple angles all on the same page. In the last video, we looked at how to implement tiles, which allowed us to slice our data on the actual dashboard. Now, we're going to learn how to visualize multiples, which will allow us to have all 4 pieces or multiple pieces of tiles visible at the same time. One limitation with multiples is that we can't add them underneath a tile. So you can see if we select the map, or we don't have vertical multiples available here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this tile. We'll just hit delete and we'll start fresh. We'll drag line total over to the view, and let's go ahead and turn this into a line chart. And we'll make it big. So now we just have our total sales. Let's break it up by order month. So we'll drag order month into the axis. So now we have a chart of sales by month. Now to split this into multiples, let's drag our product category into vertical multiples. So now we've got a split here. We can look at all of them all the top level categories side by side. We can switch this to horizontal multiples for another view. You can see this is set up to only show 3, and there's a scroll bar down here so that we can see the 4th. We can change this under layout, grid height and width. So we could change grid height, and because it's horizontal, it's only going to show 1. We can scroll through them that way. Or we can make sure that the grid width is at least as many as the number of items that we have, and so that way we can see them all. If we change it to 6, there's just blank space there. But if we change it to 4, now it's a good fit. And we can see the relative impact of the sales for each of those categories. So you can see that PowerView is a pretty quick way to get a dashboard up and running, and what it lacks in flexibility it makes up for in convenience. So in this video section, we look at how to create a PowerView, how to add drill downs to the PowerView, using filters to slice our data, as well as tiles, and finally we visualize multiples to view our slices on the same page. In the final section, we'll look at how to publish the dashboard to distribute to your audience effectively. Welcome back to Excel 2013 Dashboard Design. In this final section, we're going to look at how to publish our dashboard effectively for our audience. We'll start by learning how to clean up and lock down the workbook. We'll move on to backwards compatibility and SharePoint distribution. We'll check out SkyDrive, which is Microsoft's cloud storage. Then we'll look at Office 365 on SharePoint, which is an effective way to distribute if you don't have enterprise Microsoft solutions already implemented. And finally, we'll look at printing and exporting to PDF. So in order to clean up our workbook and make it more presentable and intuitive for our end user, first thing we can do is go ahead and hide the sheets that we don't want them to see or that they don't need to access. So for example, top products, actually that's being used for our show more top sellers. So we can leave that one. But top product trend, we'll just right click on the sheet name and click hide. NPS score, same thing. By region, sales rep quota, and NPS data. All those can be hidden. The next thing we can do is to protect the sheets that are still open and accessible to the user. So the first thing you need to know is that each cell and object can be locked or unlocked. So if we right click on a cell, format cells, protection, we show that it's currently locked. So locking does absolutely nothing unless the workbook or unless the worksheet is protected. To protect the worksheet, we'll right click on the tab, click protect sheet. We can choose which options, which available protections we'd like to have on this worksheet. The first two are usually pretty good, and we can have a password to unprotect the sheet if we need to. Let's go ahead and cancel that for now. We need to unlock the objects that we want the user to be able to access when the worksheet's protected. So we want them to be able to use the slicer, all of the slicers, including the timeline. So we'll right click on the slicer, click size and properties. Under the properties, we'll uncheck the locked box. Now we'll select the rest of the slicers and timelines and uncheck locked for each. So now when we protect the worksheet, those 4 objects are not locked and are therefore usable by the user. Now let's go ahead and protect the worksheet. We'll leave it as no password and current options selected. Now if we click on any of these cells and try to type, we get a notification that we're on a protected sheet and we can't make changes. Your users will get the same notification, but we can still come up here and choose a different filter. Now one of the things that we programmed here was the sparkline range to refresh. So we need to add code in here, unprotect, and then reprotect the sheet. Since we're trying to make changes to a cell that's locked, or a range that's locked in this case, let's type this workbook dot sheets dashboard, the sheet name, dot unprotect. And then we'll copy that below and just say protect. So we'll re-enable protection afterwards. Let's drag this cursor position up here and we'll hit play to continue. And now the macro runs without a hitch. Go ahead and close that and try again. There we go, no more error. One final thing to take care of before we're ready to go is that the country filter cannot edit the pivot table on the protected sheet. So what this is referencing is right now we're set up with the report connections to edit this pivot table down here on a protected sheet. So let's unprotect the sheet. Now we can make the modifications to this filter. We'll click Options, Report Connections, and uncheck the pivot table 4, which is on this dashboard sheet, and click OK. So now when we reprotect the sheet, click OK, our slicer should now work because it's no longer tied to modifying this table. So there we go. We can also get rid of the heading bar by going to Page Layout. The headings will uncheck the View box, so that cleans it up a little bit. We can also get rid of the grid lines if we needed to. if they were visible. And we can also hide the formula bar by going to View, Formula Bar. And of course we can hide the ribbon by clicking the up arrow. And then to unhide it, we click on any ribbon and then click the pin button to get it back. So there we have the ways that we can lock down the workbook. In the next video, we'll look at backwards compatibility and publishing to SharePoint. So in the last video, we looked at how to clean up and lock down our workbook. In this video, we're going to look at backwards compatibility and distributing our workbook using SharePoint or any other file sharing program for that matter. So when you're distributing a file in such a way that the user has to open it up in their own copy of Excel, you have a lot more to consider when you implement the functions that are available in 2013. So for example, if the user has Excel 2010, we don't get to use timelines or Power View, and if we do involve Power Pivot, then we have to make sure that they have it manually enabled as an add-in. In Excel 2007, it's even worse. There's no Power Pivot and also no slicers or sparklines, which limits a lot of the features that we implemented in this workbook. If you're working on a Mac, or rather your users are working on a Mac, it's pretty tough to deploy an effective BI solution. The pivot tables don't have database connectivity, no Power Pivot, slicers, timelines, or Power View. And if you're deploying to users on Excel 2008, there's not even VBA that is compatible with Excel 2013. So lots of considerations before you deploy in a cross or multi-version organization. With all that said, if you're just sharing with users that have Excel 2013 installed, then distribution really should go without a hitch. If you use Power Pivot, then all the data is stored with the workbook, which means that all the functionality is portable. You still have to use the connections to update the Power Pivot data model, but you can do that from your own computer and re-upload later. Or if they have access to the same data sources, then they can update it as well. If you're able to distribute your dashboard via SharePoint 2013, you have a few features that are pretty helpful. You can first of all drag and drop save as to your SharePoint folder as usual, but then your users can utilize Power Pivot features straight from the browser without even getting into Excel. And this eliminates a lot of the compatibility issues with older versions of Excel. And then you can also automate the data refreshes if the SharePoint server has access to the same data that's being pulled into your Power Pivot workbook. So if you're able to implement this enterprise solution, that's definitely the most feature-rich way to go. In the next video, we'll look at how to share on SkyDrive, which is Microsoft's personal cloud. In the last video, we looked at backwards compatibility and distributing your workbook on SharePoint. In this video, we're going to walk through how to share our dashboard on SkyDrive. SkyDrive is Microsoft's cloud storage and sharing service. You can get there by going to skydrive.live.com. You'll need to create an account, and if it's not free or included with your version of Office, then there should be a free trial available. Now, one thing that SkyDrive doesn't allow us to do is to open up protected sheets on the Excel web app, which is the online interface where we could open up Excel. So let's go ahead and get rid of our protected sheet here, unprotect our sheet. We'll right click on Dashboard and click Unprotect Sheet. And then let's go File, Save As, and we'll save it to our SkyDrive. And you might have to add a place if it's not already here. We can add a SkyDrive. and we'll just log in with your SkyDrive account credentials and then click sign in. I already have mine set up, so we'll go to there and we'll save it. Now it's uploading. You can see down here the status bar uploading to SkyDrive. And when it's all done uploading, we can just switch over to SkyDrive and we'll see it there. Once we've saved it to our SkyDrive, we can right-click the file up here. We can say open it in Excel web app, open it in Excel, download it, share it, which we can send by email or post to a social network, or get the link where we can then distribute the link however we need to with different sets of permissions and public settings. Or we can also embed it into a blog or web page. It gives us some HTML code which will reference which will create an iframe that will point to this file on SkyDrive, which is a pretty cool feature if you run a website or even an internal website where you need to publish. Just a quick look at a spreadsheet. So why don't we go ahead and open this in Excel web app. Now it's open, so I'm expecting to get an error message here. We're already using the workbook, so it can't be edited in the browser. So let's go ahead and close this in Excel. And then we'll switch back to our web app, so that way we can edit it. So you'll see we're in the browser now, looking at the actual file. So we've got a couple notices here. We've got external data connections or BI features that are not supported. Specifically, that's talking about PowerPivot, since SkyDrive isn't meant to be enterprise distribution or publication database. They've disabled that feature. What they'd have to do, since the PowerPivot runs in memory, is that they'd have to have so much memory on this server to be able to load the whole database in for processing that it wouldn't be practical. So that feature is disabled. And so is VBA. So the custom scripts we wrote will not work in this interface. And if we click any of these filters here, we'll see that those BI features are disabled. So SkyDrive is good for sharing an interactive workbook, but not really for providing a user interface to do so. Now, more practical way to distribute the dashboard for a non-enterprise user is Office 365 SharePoint Online, which we'll take a look at in the next video. In the last video, we took a look at how to share on Microsoft's SkyDrive. Now we're going to take a look at publishing on Office 365 SharePoint, which is a subscription alternative to having your own in-house deployment of Microsoft BI. In order to get Microsoft Office 365, you'll need to subscribe by going to office365.com. There's multiple plans and pricing, but we'll need at least an enterprise level to get SharePoint. Once you've signed up and logged in, you'll have your own admin page for your account, which will let you control users and various program settings. Your files are stored on this team site, behind this team site link. Right now we don't have any files or folders in here, but we're about to change that. In order to upload our document to Office 365 SharePoint, we'll need to go to File, Save As, and we need to add a place. We've got Office 365 SharePoint right here, and we'll sign in using our user ID and password. Now it's a new option in our places. So we'll click Office 365 Test, which is what I named the company in SharePoint. And we'll just click Shared Documents. And now we're able to directly upload onto SharePoint. We'll click Save. And now our file is being uploaded to SharePoint. Now we'll just refresh our team site page. And our document is uploaded. We can go ahead and open this up just by clicking on it. And right away we can see there's some compatibility issues. This is mainly because this uses SharePoint 2010 currently. By the time Excel 2013 comes out, Office 365 will have upgraded to SharePoint 2013 to be compatible, and that's slated to happen in early 2013. So you'll notice that for me, the timeline is not appearing because that's an Excel 2013 feature. Also, some of the styles are messed up, and some of the fonts and colors are a bit different. If we select unsupported features, we look at these details, we can also see that the VBA projects are disabled, and a reminder that external data queries are disabled as well. So those will be resolved with the upgrade of SharePoint 2013, so look forward to that. Once that switchover happens, this will far and away be the easiest and least expensive way to get up and running with your own SharePoint site, where your users can interact with the dashboard live right in the web in real time. So now that we've covered a number of digital publishing options, let's take a look in the next video at printing and PDF generation if you need to distribute it to users in that format. In the last video, we took a look at how to publish our dashboard using Office 365 SharePoint. And now for the final video in the series, we'll look at how to print and export our dashboard using paper as well as PDF. If you know from the start of the project that you'll need to be printing these dashboards, then make sure that throughout the process you're mindful of where page breaks could lie or organizing data so that associated groupings would fall naturally on each printed page. So for ours, I really didn't construct this dashboard with printing in mind, but let's walk through the steps anyway. If we go straight to File, Print, we'll see a preview that's probably not what we're looking for. So to fix this, we have a few options over here, including adjusting our margins to be more narrow, scaling it, making it a landscape orientation. But one of the most important things we can do is to go back and set our print range, or print area. So you can see these dashed lines here depicting where the document will be split by the printed pages. So let's go ahead and select the area that we want to print. One more row or column. And then choose Print Area, Set Print Area. So that'll set that range. Now we can set the orientation to landscape and shrink the scale. You can see our dashed line is scooting over to show that we can fit more on a single page. So you can make it multi-page compatible if you'd like. Ours doesn't really lend itself to multiple pages. So now that we've scaled it to 50%, let's go back and take a look at print again. So clearly this isn't a great layout for a one-page dashboard. But if you're planning on printing it, you'd hopefully construct yours with that in mind. Another thing that we can do is to print it to a PDF. So we can choose our printer here. If you have Adobe installed, you can see the Adobe PDF option here. Otherwise, we can go to Export and say Create PDF XPS document. This allows us to print a flat image file that's highly portable and viewable in a reliable format across pretty much any computer. So we can go ahead and just title our workbook or our PDF here and click Publish. Acrobat pops up with the document when it's done. We can zoom in and see the content for sure, although some of the images are a little distorted because it is such a small print. So there you have flat copy distribution, PDFs, physical paper. So to sum up this section, we started off by cleaning up and locking down our workbook, handled backwards compatibility, and talked about SharePoint distribution. We followed that with sharing on Microsoft SkyDrive. And then we talked about Office 365 SharePoint, which can be a really convenient and effective solution if you want online visibility and interactivity, but don't currently have the enterprise SharePoint tools. Finally, we finished with printing and exporting to PDF. That concludes this video series on dashboard design in Excel 2013. I'd like to sincerely thank you for joining me and hope that you walk away motivated and empowered to create your own BI dashboard in Excel. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can reach out to me directly via email, tony@tonyka.com. Cheers!